Good thing the 3 knockdown rule wasn't in effect last night because I was lethal to your bankroll. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition, a Degenerate Friday edition of Bury Your Bookie, brought to you and presented by Greenlight Ventures. I'm Jeff Deforrest, and very happy to have you guys with us here on the show. We're going to be joined by, and he appears right away, by the professor. He's going to be with us on the program, handicapping some college football games for us. So, best in the business when it comes to that, in my opinion, anyway. And if you're betting the games, Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything football. They have every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads as the games are transpiring. If you think you know your stuff, they have all kinds of contests with big fat paydays attached to the end, so you can check on that throughout the season. When the game's over, head on over to their online casino. You can play poker, blackjack, or engage in over 150 slot games they make available to you. Head to the website today to get in on all the action. Bet Online. The game starts here. So I got touched up on the program yesterday, Professor, and welcome to the show. Good to have you on the program. How are you, my friend?
I'm okay, Deef. How are you doing this week?
Doing all right. I really like your angle on what happened in the Miami Dolphins game yesterday. Dolphins, of course,
Right?
tonight game going against the Buffalo Bills, who have owned them. They had won 11 of 12 with Josh Allen at quarterback. We had Chris Perkins on the show, a guy who's watching everything transpire with Miami. He gave out, correctly so, the Buffalo Bills to win the game, getting 2.5 points, and also the under. Now, that was a rough one because at least I had a chance at salvation there, as the Dolphins are in the third quarter of the ball game. They're down 31-10. They're about to march in for what appears to be a touchdown that's going to put us within 1 point of accomplishing the over and bailing out, just paying the vig on the side and calling it a reasonably good day, considering we were dead wrong in our handicapping. And sure enough, Tua gets hit in the head. We know that his head, unfortunately, is about as solid. I mean, it's not like he's Marvin Hagler, this guy.
No.
Solid as a marshmallow, and he's out of the game. And then we realize the rhetoric around South Florida has completely changed. All of a sudden, Mike McDaniel, this supposed guru genius, has been tripping somewhere off in the Himalayas with Aaron Rodgers on psilocybin mushrooms.
I said last night during the game, we're looking at the photos of McDaniel. We need I don't know, nerd Mike Daniel, and not like Coke dealer Mike McDaniel with his scumbag beard, shaved, and but the like Kevin Federline become your fucking fashion advisor. Like we need geeky Mike McDaniel, not.
Yes.
I've been in South Florida for 3 years, and I'm slowly turning into a guy who dresses like a Coke dealer, Mike McDaniel. So,
Yeah, a friend of mine pointed out that McDaniel drawing up plays. If you're playing 4-4 in the backyard somewhere, in a schoolyard, in a sandlot, this guy's a genius. But becoming very suspect overall as an NFL play caller.
I don't agree with that.
No?
Look, you can have the greatest play caller in the world, and
Yeah.
if your offensive line is bad, it doesn't matter. And frankly, you can have one of the worst play callers in the world, and if the offensive line is good enough, again, kind of doesn't matter. I mean, between college and the NFL, you especially see it in college, you can see the most bland, boring. Look, Tom Osborne was winning titles, national titles, running the freaking option in the mid 1990s, which is a good 10 years after Jimmy Johnson had shown everybody in America how to coach, how to defensive scheme against the option. When it was so bad that Oklahoma had already gone to the run and shoot, like Barry Switzer had gone to the NFL and was coaching the power I. But the offensive line's good enough, and all of a sudden, Lawrence Phillips and Tommy Frazier, and the option's back again. Scheme, if your offensive line is good enough, kind of doesn't matter. And scheme, if your offensive line is bad enough, kind of doesn't matter. And I think the Dolphins are definitely in the latter.
That offensive line, though, is comprised largely of the geezers at Caesars.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were thinking. They obviously had invested a lot of money in a lot of players. They were doling out cash like there was no tomorrow.
They
But,
did. Unfortunately, they invested money in a lot of dudes that were old and injured. And,
yes.
We've seen it for 3 years now. Guys who are old and injured tend to get injured again, which is exactly what's going on with the Dolphins.
Well, and it looked like you could start throwing some of the flowers in the punch after 2 games of the season. The
Yep.
way that went, you don't want to draw those kind of conclusions so early on. But the signs, I mean, were ominously bad, especially with Tua going out with another concussion. He was speaking in Hebrew after the game, which wasn't a good sign, and he did that little thing with the fingers. And Armstead, perennially injured, and at the tail end of what was at one time a brilliant career.
Oh, he's a Hall of
Uh,
Famer. There's no question
he's
in my mind.
yeah, he's banged up again. So and not a very promising. I mean, the white flags were flying as soon as Tua went out of the ball
Right?
game, and then the only salvation I thought I had there as a gambler was that it looked like we were going to get the over, but they had to go in for that touchdown in the third quarter. And brilliant play calling there when Skylar Thompson came into the game,
I
although I'm
mean,
not sure
Skylar
anything would have
Thompson.
worked.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
not a whole lot you can do there.
yeah. So that turned out ugly. But you're saying, and I agree a little bit. I mean, you also often dabble into some conspiracy theories. You did believe that Brian Flores became the head coach of the Dolphins simply because it was Patriot sabotage
Yeah,
of the most heinous order.
He's a Manchurian coach. Yes, he was
Yes,
sent here to destroy the franchise, and
essentially he
did a really
has.
did a really good job with it. And he sent his agent Ryan Fitzpatrick down here, and the
Yes.
first time he shows up in the building, Tua gets a concussion because he hit the guy who had a heart attack the last time he got hit in the chest with a helmet. I mean, really, that was the question, right? Is it DeMar Hamlin's rib cage or is it Tua's head? And it turns out, of the two, Tua's head is the loser.
But Fitzpatrick was part of this whole sabotage theory of yours
Correct.
when he came in here, in
And people
cahoots
remember as
with
adults,
Flores.
also remember he was a Bill. So not only is he part
Yes,
of the Flores conspiracy, he is part of Al Qaeda follower Sean McDermott's conspiracy. Those of
and
you
I
who
think your
are
depiction.
unfamiliar, Sean McDermott, who famously told his team, "We need to come together to accomplish something like the guys who did 9/11." So Muhammad Al Akbar McDermott coaching the Bills there,
You were appalled, though. I mean, if they could arrest Tyreek Hill going into the stadium the week
right?
prior and have him on the ground in handcuffs and on a
Yeah.
rear naked choke, how could they allow Fitzpatrick to get
How do
through
you let
security?
Fitzpatrick get out of the airport? Honestly, like it should have been like Midnight Express the minute he showed up at the airport, straight to prison with
The
Ryan
judge, he likes you.
Fitzpatrick. Yeah.
Yes. All right, we want to get into some college football. So that turned out to be a disaster for me. Chris Perkins was right on it with the Bills and the under, and we'll see what consequences there are of this horrible performance and the fact that Tua Tagovailoa, who's already this is the third time now that he's been in concussion protocol, and it
In
might
the
have
last
been.
2 years.
Yes, and it might have been a time or two too few because we've seen some very strange
Yes,
things happen with him on the field.
there are
And
people who think it's already been as many as 6 times during his NFL career. It's 3 documented part of the protocol.
yeah, so that was ugly. And around town, literally, the rhetoric has changed to McDaniel is a clown. He's out of his league. Tua should have never got the money. Stephen Ross is a fool. They should have never let Wilkins go. So
I
it went
mean,
from a lot of promise to a lot of negativity and derogatory stuff being said about
again,
the
I think
Dolphins
you and
organization.
I are in the boat that this is probably it for Tua. So there's certainly going to be a redirection of the franchise or a reboot of the franchise. But yeah, the rest of it I don't necessarily. I mean, look, Wilkins. When someone gives a guy, 20% more than his market value, you can't compete with that. And I actually like McDaniel. I think he's a good coach. But again, as a play caller, he's been behind fantastic offensive lines everywhere he's gone till he got here, and it's the same old story with the Miami Dolphins that we've been. I mean, really, of the last 30 years, what is it, like 27 where we've started the season saying the offensive line's the problem, the offensive line's the problem. It's been, the bane of this franchise for most of my lifetime as a Dolphins fan.
Makeshift and patchwork are the two words that are thrown around. I'm not sure how to differentiate one from the other, but that's always been the preface
Really, in some
for
ways,
any
when you think
discussion
about
of
it,
the offensive line.
it goes back to Marty Lyons ending Dwight Stevenson's career on a blatant cheap shot.
Yes.
And really, the Dolphins. I'm not sure the Dolphins' offensive line has been what you would say was good in the 30 plus years since that moment.
When Chuck Klingbeil is a Dolphin offensive line Hall of Famer, then you realize that they've been sort of sadly bereft at that position. All right, let's get into some college stuff. Last
Okay.
week, I don't
Two
know
and two on
what
the
you had
show.
that one game at where you were laying, I believe, was it 7.5? And the game was decided by 8.
No, 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 no. We were on the other side of that. We had Arkansas, and we
Oh,
we
okay.
we took it at peak, which was actually 9.5. We didn't know it was going to drop so precipitously in the last hour or two before the game. It did get down to 7.5. We won at 9.5. I will tell you,
Oh, okay, good.
those of you who took it at 7.5, I feel your pain because I also had a money line, and there is no way you want to talk about coaching incompetence. Sam Pittman, if they had done the Lane Kiffin and left him uh, on the tarmac in Stillwater, Oklahoma, they would have been completely justified. I can't remember what the final yard. It was something like 640 yards to 330 yards in favor of Arkansas, and you managed to lose that game. That was one of the more incompetent coaching jobs I've ever seen. But in terms of us, and when we picked it, yes, we went home a winner on that. Iowa State was a straight up winner, although I think kind of fortunate to actually win the game.
Yes.
They had it covered the whole fourth quarter, but in terms of actually winning, a little bit fortunate. And then
Yeah.
tonight, Kansas, tough to see 4 turnovers coming. That definitely cost us the game there. And I freely admit, I did not know Colorado was that bad. I knew Colorado was bad, but I thought like last year they would manage to scheme their way into some offense. I didn't know it was. I mean, Nebraska did pretty much exactly what I thought Nebraska would do.
Sure.
I didn't realize, Deion Sanders. I mean, it's like he's trying to get his child murdered out there. Like
I don't know if he'll be appearing on 60 Minutes unless that happens
I
again.
think he's going to end up before Child Protective Services based on his offensive line recruiting. Like, like people are mad at the kid for leaving the field 2 minutes early. He should have left the field after the first quarter. Like his line really looked like it was trying to get him killed. So
Yeah, it was Ben Gazzara time there, and
yeah,
just run for your life.
that's something we'll use in the future to go back against Colorado and get that score back. But yeah, that one's on me 100%. Like I didn't know that they were
Well,
that bad.
that line kept escalating the over/under in that game. Everybody was thinking there was going to be just a field day, and points on the board are just rolling the scoreboard the entire time. But didn't turn out to be the case because Colorado didn't measure up. All right, this week I know I'm assuming you're looking at the same games here that
Got
we were
one
talking about.
added because we did just get a line shift there. So we're
Okay.
going to add one. But the games we gave out earlier, we're talking about line shift in our favor. So again, if you're online, get it now. Don't wait for kickoff. We're taking Arizona tonight against Kansas State. Was 7 when we talked about it a half an hour ago. I'm now showing 7.5. So if you can
Okay.
get that
Even
extra
better.
half point, it's a big half point. So run to your app or your computer right now and take the Wildcats plus 7 a hook. Talked about it last week. Kansas State really struggled with a Tulane team that passed the ball well. Tulane's usually more of a mixed offense, but against K-State, they just threw the ball all day. And that's what Arizona's going to want to do with Fafita and McMillan. McMillan, probably the best wide receiver in the country. I'm not sure anybody's got a defensive backfield that can match up with this kid, but it certainly ain't Kansas State athletically. I like the Wildcats here a lot at 7.5. It went from liking them a little to liking them a lot. But we'll take them. And then, excuse me,
Yeah.
going into tomorrow, LSU going to South Carolina. That one is sitting 6.5. It opened 7. It stayed there a while, trending a little bit down. South Carolina absolutely crushed Kentucky last week. Made their offense look like it was, I don't know, out of the Pop Warner era. Made them look like they needed Newt Rockne to come in and lecture about the forward pass. Not that Kentucky's ever been wide open, but still, they did not look. And the strength of Kentucky in the last few years has been their offensive line. South Carolina made them look ridiculous. I think talent-wise, South Carolina is actually somehow in the SEC and a little underrated here. LSU, again, they had a big second half to cover it up, but they struggled for a half with Nicholls State after losing to USC in week 1. I don't know why this number is where it is. South Carolina plus 6.5 looks like a no-brainer to me. I personally think they're going to have an excellent chance to win the game. So we had 2 dogs there. We're going to give you our favorite of the week, which, again, I feel bad about. I have an emotional connection to Wake Forest football, but they ain't good. Giving up, I think it was 38 to Virginia. Now have to host Ole Miss for a night game. Again, we said earlier, Lane Kiffin's going to get to pick the final score here, and knowing Lane, he ain't going to pick a small one. He likes to pick big margin. 21 and a hook. I hate saying it for Wake, but if this were 50, it wouldn't shock me. Like, Ole Miss has a really good offense. Their defense looks vastly improved, and Wake Forest is not improved on either side of the ball. That slow mesh system may give Ole Miss problems early, but I don't think it will as the game goes on. As I told you and Luby a little bit ago, I don't think the starters on Ole Miss's offense will have to punt in this game. I think they'll score literally every possession. So, again, we don't really like to pick games like this, but at 21 and a hook, I think Ole Miss fairly bargain here. And then the nightcap, which is Cal at San Diego State. Cal, total overreaction, in my opinion. People think Cal's good now because they went and beat Auburn. That game was not about Cal being good. That game was about Auburn, once again, under Hugh Freeze, being terrible. Laying 18 and a hook to San Diego State. Worth noting, in week 1, Cal only beat UC Davis by 18. So, again, you get San Diego State at 18 and a half. I'm not saying San Diego State's going to win the game. I don't think they're going to win the game, but 7, 10 would be very unsurprising to me here. So San Diego State plus 18 and a half. And I'm taking one more.
All right.
And I didn't want to do this with Luby, but we got a line move in FSU and Memphis. FSU up to 7. Game opened at 5.5. It's been sitting at 6.5 for a couple days. Now sitting at 7, according to. I don't know why Florida State's laying points in this situation. Like, I get having confidence in Norvell, but this team has fundamental talent issues, and Memphis can score. I will tell you, if you're getting better than 2-1 on the money line, which at plus 7 should be right in that area, you should probably take it because Memphis is going to have a good chance to win this football game.
All right, another play added in by the professor here. So you got a 5-pack of college football plays. The Ole Miss game, literally, even though they've gotten their opponents from the same German graveyard as Canelo Alvarez last 5 fights, they put up like 120 points or something.
It's funny you mentioned that because we were looking at commercials, and a Canelo versus whatever ranch hand he's fighting next advertisement came up, and Luby was like, "Who's that?" I was like, "I have no idea." And I got to be honest, I forget that Canelo is still fighting. I don't know.
Yes.
He doesn't care if I know about it because everybody in Mexico buys the pay-per-view. No matter, he could fight Luby, and everybody in Mexico would still buy the pay-per-view. But yeah, like I forget Canelo's still active.
Still out there, yeah, dodging mandatory events, but and you know he's still got the all-time claim in terms of justifying the presence of steroids in his body. That he was at Taco Bell somewhere in San Diego. the meat was contaminated. So
I mean, it's Taco
holy
Bell.
Panama Lewis. What are we talking about?
Honestly, that's a better excuse than Baffert, which was the jockey was on steroid and peed in the hay, and the horse ate the hay. I mean, Taco Bell.
Okay, yeah, because the groom took a dump in the corner of the stall. That was a good one. Yeah, I told you my Baffert story though, right?
From anywhere.
We were coming into a restaurant, Jersey Kyle and I, and a couple of guys that were in San Diego, going to the Del Mar meet there for a couple of days, and we go into a restaurant, and as we're going in, Baffert's coming out with his wife Jill, and she goes to tip the valet parking guy who brought their car up, and like a dozen syringes fell out of her purse. We're thinking, oh yeah, everything's on the level there, bro. Bobby,
I mean,
we loved him when he first came on the scene.
Depending on when this is, that could just be Ozempic, right? Like, I feel like
could be, yes.
Every celebrity is just carrying around Ozempic shots.
All right,
Right, but
Professor.
I think that during that game last week, Tom Brady actually shot it into his face, and that's the reason he had nothing to say for most of the second half.
And it should be put on the record that you're not the strongest of Brady and/or New England Patriot
I mean,
backers.
I do not like Tom Brady. I do not like the New England Patriots. But no, don't think of me like everybody. I literally saw "We want Greg Olson back" posts all over Twitter during that game, and I didn't even watch the game, so I assume he did not have an impressive performance in his announcing debut.
It wasn't overwhelmingly, I mean, it could have been anybody. You were hoping for more from Tom Brady. Maybe he'll loosen up a little bit. We'll see. Professor, we love you, man. Thanks so much. Good luck with all your plays.
Let's
And
have a big weekend, folks.
thanks for joining us here on the show, the Professor,
Have a great
ladies and
one.
gentlemen. All right. We still, this has been bugging me because it was a bad omen for me. And I'm sorry that we buried you if you were following my plays. That's why we brought a guy on that actually watches the Miami Dolphins and sees all of the practice and the rhetoric and all of the different stuff. It is incredible how one game can turn around the entire perspective that you have about a team. But it was hard to picture that team that played last night winning the AFC East, ever beating Buffalo, which they have now lost 12 out of 11 to Buffalo and Josh Allen. And especially in light of the fact that we don't know the level of severity and how much time is going to be missed by Tua Tagovailoa. And we certainly the guy seems like a sweetheart of a kid. It's impossible to really root against him if you see the way he comports himself and conducts himself. But wow, I mean, you don't want a guy who's on Queer Street as your quarterback, and you'd hate to see him incur any more of this kind of head trauma as got through all of last year. He was sliding on this particular play. I think he just lost himself to the fact that there was a lot of futility going on with the Dolphins offense. And they had to feel at that point, if they go in for a score, they're in there with a shot, maybe down 2 touchdowns. It wasn't like Buffalo was torching them with their offense. It was mostly Dolphin mistakes, turnovers, the 3 interceptions, 1 for a touchdown, and then turning the ball over on downs inside their own territory, which they did a couple of times. So, there was still an outside chance there, but you hate to see what happened. And it is amazing how the perspective on this team has turned completely in what we're seeing online and social media and the commentary and the things that are being written and said about this Miami Dolphin team right now. But the bad omen for me, I got a tip on a horse. I kind of tend to, and it's funny, I don't know about you guys if you're horse players, but out of maybe 1,000 tips that I've gotten in my lifetime that I thought I might respond to and maybe put some money behind them, I think I could count on one hand, maybe less than one hand. If I was a Mordecai Three-Finger Brown, I probably could count the number of tip horses that came in for me and scored. And so, very, very precarious. And the word must have circulated all around the world because this horse was at Churchill Downs yesterday, race number 5. The 14 ball, and a friend of mine calls me and says, "I got one, you cannot lose. Got it from the jockey who was riding the horse in training and says he's been running a hole right in the wind in the morning under the cover of darkness." So apparently this was a universal tip horse because the horse is 10-1 morning line, first-time starter. Nobody knows what it's going to do except the people that are on the inside of the game. And all of a sudden it goes, it went down as low as 5-2, close to post time. It ends up going on for 3-1. And are you obligated, if somebody gives you a tip on a horse like that, to share it with your friends? That would be the question of degenerate etiquette. So, and knowing that if you do, and they say, "Well, where did this come from?" You say, "Well, it was a jockey who rode the horse in training, and it's up there, and the workouts don't necessarily reflect anything close to what this horse's ability is." And you got the whole spiel behind it, the whole story. And are you obligated then to give that tip to your friends? So I do, and naturally they all say, "Okay, you want me to put a little taste on it for you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. What the hell? Just go ahead. I'll pay you whenever I see you." Now it's Zelle. It's hard to get out of these sort of things. But the long story short, the horse went off 3-1 at post time. What was in contention early in the race, and finished so far last that the horses for the next race, the 6th on the card, were just about approaching him as he crossed the finish line for the 5th. It was such ugliness. and tells you once again. I buried a few people with that, so that was a bad omen for what would transpire later on in that Dolphin game. Where wow, at least you can't cry over these things. You lose, you lose. It doesn't matter how it happens. I mean, they're taking the rake and they're taking your chips off the board there. What do you mean he rolled a 7, right? You turn around for a split second. All of a sudden, they're swiping all of your chips off the craps table. So if you lose, and I'm not one to really want to go on and whine about it. It was just you're looking at the scenario there, and you're probably going to bail out and salvage the over in the game on a split ski with the Dolphins in the over that at least I recommended to you guys. And okay, so you're going to have 48 points, 3 minutes to go, fourth quarter, still scoreboard pressure on the Buffalo Bills to at least attempt field goals. You still had a chance late in that game until this Bass, who kicks for the Buffalo Bills. I believe that he will be a detriment to them having any chance of winning a championship, as good as they looked last night, as well as they looked on the field last night. This guy, I recall just shanking crucial field goals, especially with regard to covering point spreads and over and under situations. So he would have left you at least with a prayer that you get a backdoor cover on the over if he had made that one field goal, which he shanked badly. I mean, it looked like the ball had a gyroscope in it. And that's when you knew you weren't going to get the backdoor cover with the Dolphins somehow miraculously with Skylar Thompson taking it down the field against a non-prevent defense that was designed to just let them walk in and score and eat up clock. And that would have put us in a good spot. So you're never out of it if you have the over. But you were last night, just dead in the water. And they started blowing taps for the over players and carrying them out of the casinos in body bags, as we say, as soon as Tua went down. All right, a lot of fun being with you. Good luck with all your plays. I did have a couple of other suggestions here from our friend Mark Lawrence, playbooksports.com. Outstanding. Check that site out. You'll really love it. And he had some tremendous revenge theories going today. But in the college ranks, in the Apple Bowl, he liked Washington State +5 over Washington, and Oregon State +17 over Oregon. This the revenge of the Pac-2, as the rivalries are still going on with those teams at least. And he thinks that the teams that got the shaft there and got stuck in the Pac-2 are going to come up big and cover the point spreads. Both teams getting points. Washington State getting 5, Oregon State getting 17. And then he also was talking about the revenge of the North, as you have teams coming off losses and they're going on the road as underdogs. Cleveland, he likes to bounce back, getting 3 points against Jacksonville. And he likes the Bengals not to get off to an 0-2 start, saying that was a bit of an aberration, that big loss that they had that triggered all of the departures from survivor pools to the Patriots last week, that they're going to avenge that by covering 6 points against the Chiefs. That's Mark Lawrence and his selections from playbooksports.com. Hey, everybody, have a great weekend. Hope it's a very profitable one. We'll see you on Monday with a little recap of what's going on. Thanks for joining us here on NoFilter.net and our various other platforms. For our good friend Henry, Leslie, and Joe at No Filter, we really thank you for all your help throughout the week. Hope you enjoyed the programs. We'll see you next time. I'm Jeff Deforrest, the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.